And instead of saying, I have to work out or I need to work out, like a lot of people do, and I've caught myself doing that many, many times, like, oh, geez, I need to work out today. She says, I get to work out.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken.
Hey everyone, welcome to our Manifestation Motivation Monday. So today we're going to talk about the importance of the words you speak. And a couple of years ago, I went through this neuro-linguistic programming course to learn all about hypnosis, subliminals, and really just about the subconscious mind and how it can be reprogrammed for positive changes. And the course made me realize how important language is in training the subconscious and how we really need to be intentional with the words that we speak. So, for example, the subconscious doesn't hear negative leading words. So, if you were to say, I don't want to be broke anymore, your subconscious isn't processing the word don't. Instead, it's just hearing, I want to be broke. So, this is why it's so important to start talking about what you do want instead of what you don't want. And I think a lot of us are in the habit of talking about what we don't want just because of all the conditioning. And so it includes complaining. When you complain, your subconscious is focusing on the very thing you're complaining about, and it's not going to process the fact that it's negative or the fact that it's something you don't like. So, complaining, gossiping, affirming what you don't want is actually working against you every step of the way.
Yeah, you know what I find interesting, Stephanie, is like how powerful changing one simple word in a sentence is. And so this came up for me the other day, actually, because on the days I don't go to CrossFit, I'll do one of my Peloton classes. And on the tread, one of the instructors is this like super high vibe energy woman named Jess Sims. And in every one of her classes, she always talks about like the privilege of working out. And instead of saying, I have to work out or I need to work out, like a lot of people do. And I've caught myself doing that many, many times, like, oh, geez, I need to work out today. She says, I get to work out. And I find that when I say that to myself and it comes from a place of gratitude, of like, wow, I get to do something great for my body. And talking to myself that way is like such an energetic shift from saying, oh, I have to work out today. And then I realized that I use the phrase have to a lot. And when you think about it, it's like a truly disempowering phrase. And for example, like I recently started coaching CrossFit and I coach classes at 6:30 in the morning 3 times a week. So it's totally changed up my morning routine. And I have found myself saying like, shit, I have to get up early and I can't do XYZ because I have to coach tomorrow morning. And if you look at that one sentence, I'm using negative language 3 times in one sentence. I'm saying, I have to get up early. I can't do XYZ. I have to coach. And there's nothing positive in that statement. So if instead I say, like, okay, I get to get up early tomorrow and start my day because I get to coach people and help them achieve their fitness goals. And I love doing that. And even though this changes my schedule, I get to be creative with figuring out a new morning routine on those days. Like that statement has a completely different vibrational energy than the I have to statements.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it is linked to vibrational energy. It's not just a word, it is creating a vibration that our body and our subconscious and our mind recognizes. And that actually made me think when you were talking about the Peloton, which I need to get a Peloton. I'm hearing like everyone loves them and
Oh, I
I
love
think I might get one. But I do this workout. It's just like a YouTube workout, but I really like the trainer because of the language she uses. And I think for a long time, I didn't enjoy working out because it was always these like hardcore trainers that would like yell at you, kind of, and it was more negative. But this woman, like when you're in the middle of like a gazillion squats and you feel like your legs are just going to collapse, she's like, keep going, like work those big, beautiful legs. They've gotten you through life. They walk you through life every single day. They help you pick up your kids. They help you get things done. And it's like so motivating. And it just makes me think like, man, I am so grateful that I get to do this right now because there's people that unfortunately can't. And so
Right.
who am I to sit here and complain? So that's such a good point. And speaking of vibrational energy, something else that I learned recently when I was diving into the nervous system and finding out how we are in fight or flight mode all the time, just because life is stressful in today's world. And what I realized through learning about this is that feeling anxious is the exact same feeling as excitement. So they've actually done tests on this where they look at people's physiological state and the response that they have. And when someone is anxious and experiencing anxiety, it's the same exact physiological response as when they feel excited. And so the only difference is the way that you're framing it up in your mind. So when you're feeling anxious, you can actually trick your mind into thinking that you're just excited by speaking it and saying how excited you are. And since you will recognize that same feeling in your body, the word excitement, it's kind of like a trigger that tricks your brain into like automatically going into that excited state. So now every time I start feeling anxious, because I'm a highly like anxious person, I'm just like, I trick myself and I sound like a lunatic. So I'm like, oh, this is so exciting, so exciting. But it actually works and it does make me feel better.
Okay, so I have to tell you a story because this would have been a really good one for me to use 2 days ago on Saturday night. And so we've been having like massive storms here in the panhandle of Texas for over a month, like nonstop. It never stops raining for more than a day. And then it's like all of a sudden there's another storm and you get a few nice hours and then another storm. And I live in an area where like it hardly ever rains. And so it's having a major impact on a lot of people here, especially like farms and feedlots. Animals are drowning, people's homes are getting flooded, and it just like never ends. And to put this in perspective, we have had more rain in the last few weeks of May than this area typically gets in an entire year. So there's a lot of flooding. There's areas that are like normally dry. They literally look like they're lakes that should be there when they shouldn't. And it's like our soil here is hard and it never rains. And so the water's not getting absorbed. And you drive through it, it's like, oh, it's so pretty because everything's green, but it's actually been pretty destructive. And it's so bizarre because like there's a park down my house, down the street, and you drive by and it's just like picnic tables floating in the water because the water's risen up to like the table level. And so it's kind of crazy. And my horse stalls have just been like a total mess with like 2 to 3 feet of standing water in them for the last month. And it just never stops. So I can't even clean anything. But anyway, my point is, I worked on Saturday night and it was really nice for like a few hours. And then all of a sudden, the clouds start forming. And there was even a tornado forming, which I have never seen in person before. And so it was kind of cool to watch, even though it was also a little terrifying. But fortunately, like it didn't touch the ground, but the wind picked up and thunder and lightning started. And then it was just this like massive torrential downpour with fierce sideways howling winds and intermittent hail. And this lasted nonstop for 2 hours. And water was coming in under the doors and people couldn't leave. And we're all just like stuck there and we're trying to push towels against the door. And I just kept thinking like, shit, I hope my animals are okay. And then it's like about 10:30 at night and there's a break in the storm and the wind died down a little bit and it was raining lightly. So I decided I'm going to go home because my dogs have been crated since like 2 in the afternoon and it's now almost 11 o'clock at night. And it was supposed to start raining hard again in an hour. So I figured like this is my chance to leave. And the road to my house it's like a 2 mile road that it's paved, but it's like very like up and down, like hilly. And so it floods every time it rains. And it's been closed multiple times in the past few weeks. So I didn't even know if I would be able to get home, but I decided like I have to chance it, right? Stephanie, this was literally the most terrifying drive home that I've ever had. First of all, it's dark and like I don't see well in the dark to begin with, right? And then you add rain and flooding on top of that, and you can't tell how deep the water is. And my brain did this like really weird thing where I just kept rubbing my eyes and I'm like trying, like that would clear the darkness. So like if I rub my eyes enough, it would be light. Just stupid. But I was more nervous on this drive home than I think I have ever been in any situation in 15 years as a cop. So that's like saying a lot for my anxiety on this drive. And I'm not afraid to admit this. I called my mom. I asked her to just stay on the phone with me until I got home in case something happened. And like, Mom, if you're listening to this, thank you, because I am so grateful that you stayed on the phone with me for 45 minutes on my drive home. And my drive to work is 15 minutes. And like I said, it took me 45 minutes to get home. And every time I approached a flooded spot, I was like totally filled with anxiety and nervousness because I was the only one on the road for most of the drive. So it's not like there were cars ahead of me and I could watch how they went through the water. And I had no way to measure how deep it was. And so every time I came upon this like river of water in the street, I had a death grip on the wheel and I was like, oh my God, please just let me make it through this and get home. And I kept thinking like, I'm going to be one of those dumbass people who gets stuck trying to drive through a flooded street and your car dies in like the middle of the water and you're just stuck there. And then I'm thinking like, okay, how long will it take me to walk home if that happens? And just all this shit, right? And so very long story short, I made it home, but it was the scariest drive of my life. And I like barely made it into my driveway because there's flooding all over my street. And it took me like 30 minutes to kind of calm down and stop shaking once I got in the house. And so what you just said about like saying this is so exciting when you're nervous, it made me think of this conversation I had with one of my coworkers last week about storms and flooding, because he's talking about how exciting it is. He loves driving through the flooded areas and the giant puddles. And I'm like, you're fucking crazy. That's terrifying. And now I wonder, like, okay, if I had that perspective driving home Saturday night, would that have eased my anxiety if I looked at my drive as like, this is exciting or this is an adventure, instead of just being like gripped in complete and total fear?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like instances like that, it might ease it a little bit, but like you're still going to have anxiety, you know? My great uncle actually got swept away in a flood, but like luckily there was this young woman that saw his car like floating away and she went and like rescued him. And he was like so old at the time and he was kind of like let go. He's like, whatever. And she's like, no, we're getting you out. And she saved his life. But now I'm always like super leery of floods.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I just think when you're talking about the storm, I remember like the first major hurricane we had since moving to Florida. My daughter was pretty young at the time. And I remember like I didn't want her to panic or freak out. Like they were thinking it was going to be a category 4 or 5 when it hit. So I was just like, this is going to be so exciting. And we're going to go to grandma's house and we're going to camp out and it's going to be so fun. And it helped me feel better. Like, even though I was comforting her, like it did help me, you know, feel better. Not that my anxiety was completely erased, but it like, I think it kept me from having a full blown like panic attack. So, I mean, I think there is definitely something to it. So I don't know. Everyone should just try that this week because I feel like there's always things to be anxious about, especially just being an anxiety ridden person. So try it out this week with like, maybe like with work or something like that. And just tell yourself, you know what, this is an exciting opportunity. Like, this is going to be so great. I'm going to feel so good when I'm done and I'm going to feel so accomplished, whatever you're doing. And I don't know, maybe it'll help you get through the week a little bit easier.
Yeah. And change your I need to do XYZ to I get to do XYZ, because it is seriously a pretty cool shift in your thinking when you do that. And it kind of almost forces you to be grateful for things that normally you're just like, oh, I don't want to do this, but you're fucking lucky because you get to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Instant mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, hopefully that helps everyone have a better week. And make sure you tune back in on Wednesday for another one of our Weird Wednesday episodes that are always lots of fun. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you get our latest episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you could, please rate and review the show. We are going to be reading every single review, And I would love it if you hopped over to Instagram at Unapologetically Outspoken and say hi. We want to see who's out there and start a conversation, plus get all of the topics that you want us to talk about next. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.